to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please be seated. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 2 through 6 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 2 is approval of the minutes of the May 21st meeting. Item 3 is approval of the claims. Item 4 from Board Administration includes A, approval of resolution approving petition for suspension of taxes through the redemption process for initials VR, and B, approval of resolution for a tax suspension for initials VM. Item 5 from the County Auditor is approval of liquor license application for Correctionville Golf Club in Correctionville. 6 from Human Resources includes A, approval of memorandum of personnel transactions, B, authorization to initiate the hiring process, and C, approval of retiree request to remain on the county health and dental insurance, and D, approve the purchase of cyber liability insurance for FY25. Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So wanted to address item 16 of the minutes that regards comments during citizens' concerns. Normally, that's just short and on the topic, but just make a motion to approve with my name spelled T-A-Y-L-O-R. So minor.
It was misspelled?
Yes.
Okay.
What was it?
T-A-Y-L-O-R. Just the spelling of the last name.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And other than that, would move the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion by Taylor, spelled correctly. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 7 from Secondary Roads. Looks like we got fill-in for our county engineer. Action item, this is approval of the FY24 Woodbury County Secondary Road Department Budget Amendment Number 1.
Any questions on that? Not really.
You want to just explain it for the public?
We had to amend the budget. Basically, we had increased maintenance costs, and the county budget's already been amended, and this is just the DOT side of it, the amendment.
So-
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Bittinger. Any questions?
Just for the good of the public, can we state how much we're looking for?
I don't believe we're looking for anything additional. We're just moving items around.
Just moving and transferring?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Hearing no other questions, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you. Item 8 from Board Administration, Finance Director Dennis Butler, begins with A for action. This is approval of $400,000 transfer from general supplemental to self-liability insurance fund. Dennis?
Okay, this doesn't happen hardly, we've never done this before, but in this situation, we've had negative cash balance at the end of the fiscal year because of increases. In this case here, we're down around 161,000 end of last year. Right now, we are 329,000 in the hole. Partial reason for that is because our property insurance went up over $220,000. Totally unexpected. We did not expect that. But when I look back at my house insurance, I didn't expect that to go anywhere either. But with all the storms around, things like that, and who knows what's going to be next year. But right now, that's one of our contributing factors. We did move the attorney fees over to the supervisor's office. They're related to supervisor costs, not to the self-insurance fund, such as Templar, any expert witnesses, we get things like that. So with that said, I did show you a comparison of 23 actual, $923,091. Actual for fiscal year '24 is $1,081,000, and then the estimate for next year is $1,258,000. Somewhere we have to start putting some kind of reserve in our balance. We just can't end up with zero in our balances at the end of the year. There's a potential lawsuits we could have, would have to be paid out of this fund, so we need to start accumulating some money there. And this won't be much. And again, next year, we don't know where that $177,000 will go for fiscal year '25, '26. So right now, we know it's gonna be $177,000 projected, we have no clue. So this will actually get us out, this comes out general sup, it will drive our reserves down general sup some, but that is a fund that if we do run out of money, we have the ability to levy for it. General basic, rural basic, any of these other funds, we do not.
In the financial impact, is the 732,000 estimated before or after this movement?
I'm
In
sorry.
your financial impact, you have the 732,000 estimated reserve level?
Yes.
That's before this movement?
That will be after.
That's after.
The movement,
Okay.
yes. Because our reserves from the time I told you back then, when it's 7 or 9, 8%, it's higher now.
So is your intent in making this movement regarding, so correct me if I'm wrong, you want the self-insurance fund or self-liability fund to have payments for premiums that are somewhat known and for more variable costs, like attorney fees on projects, to be paid out of the supervisor's budget?
Yes.
Okay,
Now, there are times they do have to have attorneys in the liability fund on a workman comp case or things like that. You know, that's not known, but at the end of the year, we should have about 50,000 left over to try to start building something in that self-liability fund, which we need something, because if we don't have money to pay a judgment, in case we have a lawsuit, then we gotta start selling bonds. Then you got bonds and interest, pay a lawsuit, and we don't wanna end up in that predicament. We never have in the history of Woodbury County.
yeah, and even though we're dealing with more costs, I think that separation is logical.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, understand the item. A little frustrated that the last time we visited this a couple weeks ago, we were at -310. All of these are fixed costs. The one that wasn't mentioned, of course, is the LEC insurance of $177,000. So just to remind, we had programmed 1.2 million for FY '25.
Yep.
What's needed is 1,568,847 to be at a wash. And so we're about 368,847. 48% of that is the LEC insurance. So we don't have that budgeted right now, and I thank you for this, Dennis, in terms of breaking that out. So I'm gonna be a no vote on this tonight, just because there was an alternative. I understand the board didn't carry. And then the other thing I was wondering is, can we label the $300,000 as attorney fees rather than just professional fees, just for transparency's sake, underneath the
It'll
Board
be
of
under the board,
Supervisors?
yes. And that's always, it's been that way for years.
Okay, because I thought I saw it noted as professional fees.
Yes, that's where we put it, yes.
Okay,
Because professional service, you do not have to bid out.
yeah. And then the last one, if I may.
Just a
Okay,
clarifying question, would those always be attorney's fees?
They could be expert fees. They could be any kind of professional service you do need. Not limited only to attorneys, but the bulk of it is attorney fees.
Could be like consulting services or?
Yes,
Okay,
because those are, you don't have to bid those out.
okay, so why would we want to change it to something more specific?
Because I think it's for attorney fees.
Well,
We
it's
may,
more than attorney fees.
okay, what
And
else
if
is
we
it?
have to, I can get a breakdown and bring that back next week. Well, I won't be here next week, but the week after.
Okay, because I was led to believe that 300,000 was all attorney fees between Heidman and Templar and anything else that we had,
Allers.
allers. So the only reason I said it would make more sense is that's the only thing that we've used it from. So I just,
Well, that's the desire of the board. We'll change it.
Do you say professional fees in other areas of the budget, or do you say attorney's fees?
I would put
In other
professional
areas of-
service, I think in the liability and HR, don't we put professional services.
We
For
do,
attorney
and there
fees.
is in the liability fund a separate line for attorney fees, but it goes under the same liability fund.
but I believe what we're saying is that will no longer be the case. Is there,
Well,
because,
there'll be some There'll be sometimes she may have attorney fees, potentially.
So we'll do the attorney fees, just so I'm understanding,
We
because,
have attorney fees under liability insurance. That's the only one I know of. Under HR, I think they're classified professional services, under HR. When you do
For the attorney
negotiations, things like
fees?
that, yes.
No, it's classified attorney fees, but it's under the liability fund.
But on your, when you do negotiations under HR,
Mm-hmm.
those are under professional fees. You don't have attorney fee line item, do you?
I have been using the attorney fee
Okay,
line for
I don't care.
those
It can be
negotiations,
either way.
however we do it.
Professional fees, well, we've had it for years, under the board. The board wants to change it, that's fine.
I just think because we're taking attorney fees and we're moving it to something that's going to be dedicated for that, unless there's some sort of off weird example, it would
There
seem.
might be I don't know, I'd have to go back and see the breakdown of the claims, see, you know, there could be consulting fees. I know we've had consultants before for the board. And we just always put them on professional services. The board wants to add a line for attorney fees, we'll have to figure out how much to move over there, but we can do that through an appropriation change. This is gonna, in amendments, just to get the money in the budget, so we got to pay the bills. Okay, we don't pay the bills.
I
Simple as that.
understand the movement of they're all currently attorney's fees, but I don't have any question that professional fees includes attorney fees. And if that's what we have through the rest of the budget, I don't know why it wouldn't be consistent and not come back to this if we hire a consultant and have to explain to the public that's not an attorney, even though it's under attorney's fees. So,
Can I just ask one more?
Yep.
I appreciate it. So just to clarify, because a couple of weeks ago you said we're moving attorney's fees under the Board of Supervisors. We can call it whatever we want. Will there be, because I'm adding these fixed costs up, which these are all fixed costs, and we can budget it very easily, add 4 or 5 numbers together. Will there be attorney fees for negotiations and for bond counsel from the liability fund, or is that all?
No.
So everything's being moved, these 3
Yes.
attorneys,
Yes.
under professional fees,
Yes.
outside of if we end up
Correct. Yeah,
getting a consultant
negotiations,
for
that
something?
shouldn't be under liability fund to begin with.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything else, Dennis?
Nope.
All right, I'll move approval.
Second?
Second by Bittenger. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-1, Taylor opposed. We are at our 4:45 PM set time. This is item 8B. This is a public hearing on amendment number 1 to the Woodbury County FY 2024 budget.
Okay, this is our annual time we actually amend the budgets to get them all up to snuff. Most of these have been approved, or all of them have been approved by the board previously. We just wait and do it at one time, so we don't have to publish in the papers one time. Instead of multiple times, because it does cost quite a bit of money to do this. And we have to do it by the end of May to give the opportunity to citizens to protest potentially any amendment we do, just like the budget.
Okay.
So this is why the state sets a deadline towards May 31st, we do it the 28th. And we can go through each one of these if you want to, or any select ones you want to talk about. Most of them are pretty, explanatory on the breakdown where I gave you these sheets here of what it's for. Now, some of these are gonna be repetitious next year. I'll give you examples of county auditors' fees for our publishing costs, because the state mandates this, that we have to do it. It's under the auditor's auspices, but this is gonna come about every year. We did not know we we're gonna do this when we budgeted for next year, so we're gonna have to amend it again next year. These are one of these unfunded mandates. The state should have funded something, seeming they thought in their desires of best interest to send this notice out, but they desire not to pay stuff sometimes. So that's gonna happen again next year. Attorney fees for the board, we don't know there because we don't know how far we're going with the potential legal actions to recoup money we're spending. The rest are pretty simple there. But if there's any question on these, I'll answer them.
Well, let's go sequentially. Does anyone, Mr. Taylor, do you have a question on?
Okay.
And Mr. Bittenger after that?
I had one further down the line on number 4, but we can take them in order if anybody has one before that, if that was your thinking.
Go ahead.
So number 4, the professional fees of $300,000, that's for up until this point that we hadn't budgeted, is that correct?
Correct,
we gotta
plus
make-
any future May and June costs we may have.
Okay,
Now, we may not use the whole 300,000. If we don't, it stays in reserves.
okay. So I think we've been examining the claims each month and about $25,000 roughly. I haven't seen one underneath of that for the Board of Supervisors in support of the attorney who's helping represent us in the law enforcement center matter. My concern is, what's in the budget for next year? FY '25 regarding professional fees, AKA attorney fees,
Well, there's definitely not 300,000 because we have no idea how much we're gonna need.
what is there?
That's gonna be, I don't have it with me right now, Jeremy, but it's probably around 60,000.
Okay, so most likely, I mean, knowing that we're going to ramp up potentially toward arbitration, mediation, trial, whatever, we could be looking at another 240 or even more than that if it goes to,
Oh, potentially, yes.
okay.
We'll have
So,
to amend the budget again.
yeah. So I just wanted to point that, that's a concern as we've shed almost $3.5 million in a 4-month period. I know that's not what's before us right now, but I just, down the road, that's gonna be an issue. Thank you.
Mr. Bidger?
Yeah, mine's further down. Number 9, the capital projects. Dennis, do you have any, what are those again? Do you, anything specific? Is this just general?
Those are actually in our CIP fund
That's
where
all
we have carryover funds we
Okay.
budget for. We're spending 23, 22, plus 24 now, 800,000 we just borrowed.
Okay.
So it's a combination of several years that we don't have budget in the current year. We may have had them budget in the past year, but they carry over, but we got a budget to spend them.
Okay.
Budgets don't carry over appropriations year to year. You have to amend them, put them back in.
Yeah.
Sorry, if we can work backwards. I was slow to the draw with Dan. On number 8, for secondary roads, are these all things that we hadn't budgeted or ended up being due to increased costs, or do you know kind of the,
They were,
The
see, this is a
story.
different DOT budget there, he's shifting money around in there. This is actual increases in cost, and I listed the actual line items going to, consultant fees, road maintenance, asphalt 8 inches. He took some away from diesel fuel, moved that around a little bit, but the net result is 301,000 out of his reserves, which doesn't affect our tax asking, because our tax asking for secondary roads is always the minimum levy. He has to work it out in his own fund, revenues, and also his reserves that he hadn't spent the previous year. And that effect, the 0020, the 187,212, that's out of reserves because it's projects that carry over from previous years.
Yeah, it's really sad what it costs to do business and that it just continues to rise. I mean, I'm looking at all the stuff that he's got in here and we've purchased quite a few of that recently and it's depressing. So. And to your point, Jeremy, on number 4, with the professional fees, we continue to be damaged every day that we're not in there, substantially. Substantially.
yeah. And I hope you understand my reason for highlighting the $3.5 million, if you include what we know 99% will not be occupancy in July and August, is to highlight just how dire it is, and make sure that that message is consistent from what we talk about in closed session to here, and that is the impetus for knowing that we have been damaged. So I know it doesn't feel good for us publicly, but just I'm appreciative of that point.
Well, at some point, it'll feel better when some damages are recouped.
Yep.
Any other questions?
So Dennis, what's the long and short of what we're transferring from reserves by this
That is
eventual
on
action?
the second page here. I broke down the cash, revenue sources, reserves. Cash reserves, $1,350,000.
Okay, that's the magic number. Sometimes we have all
Yeah.
this up here. So just for the public, we did the 1.25 million on May 14th. Tonight, we're doing 1.35 million.
Most of the reserves are basically out secondary roads and CIP.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
You want to explain the reserves out of CIP, Dennis, what that means?
CIP reserves, that is money we have carried over from previous fiscal years that we didn't spend, where we budgeted for them. The project came in under estimates, so we carry that over to use in other projects that we have had happen. And that's 800, I think it's 830,000, I believe. 880,000 reserves. That was previous year's accumulations that we have to spend within 2.5 years. So we're budgeting, so they do spend all that down. The 800,000 capital loan is for this year. Now, some of those projects will be carried forward to next year. So we'll
Okay,
have the same thing come up next year.
so a capital project reserve is a different sort of thing
Yeah,
than
that's their own separate reserve, their own separate fund entirely.
traditionally what we say when we say
Yes.
reserves. Okay.
Yep.
Ms. Taylor?
So are we with those introductory remarks, are we in a public hearing?
Yeah, we've gone through an explanation here if the board is okay with opening.
And that refers to the public too. They've heard it too.
Yep. The public hearing is now open for anyone who wishes to address the board on this item of the amendment.
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the public hearing be closed.
Second motion by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Item C is a discussion and approval of a transfer appropriation in the sheriff's FY '24 budget overtime transfers.
This is an annual deal, does not affect the overall budget at all. Usually we have 4 or 5 items where the sheriff comes back where they've shifted people around, overtime around. This year, there's only one they have for a minimum of 38,000 from, the jail to overtime and transport. They've had a lot of transports lately. So it doesn't affect our overall budget, doesn't affect public safety, the area, public safety. It's just moving the money, which they have to come to the board to do that. So that's a minimum one there. Usually have 4 or 5 of them.
Okay.
That's just to approve that separately. And then the item D is actually approving a budget, resolution approving a budget amendment number 1. Probably should have had those switched around. 4 could have been 3, 3 could have been 4.
I'll move item C.
I'll second the motion by Nelson. Any questions on item C? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Item D is approval of resolution for the FY '24 budget amendment number 1. I'll move for discussion. Second by Raddick. Any discussion? Or anything else, Dennis?
No.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0.
Oh, the item I was gonna tell you, I did find a sheet I was looking for, cash reserves. I did break it down by fund. You may not have that in your sheet. I thought you did. But general basic is 437,000, general sub 32,000, secondary roads 400,000. CIP is 880,000.
Sorry, was there confusion about?
No, it just looked like Dennis. Sorry, it just looked like Dennis was gonna talk and then.
Okay,
I
Dennis.
didn't
Yeah,
know
I
if
was
that-
just trying to get
No.
that in before you voted to show you the breakdown of cash reserves, what funds were being hit. That's
Okay.
all.
Okay.
Apologize.
Sorry.
Are we good?
Yep, you're good.
I'm a yes vote on it. And I didn't say anything because
Okay.
Dennis caught me short.
All right. Item 9 is reports on committee meetings.
Did you vote on that? Was it 5-0?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any reports?
last week, Thursday, had a Soil Water Conservation Board meeting. It was pretty interesting. With all the rainfall that we've had, which is a major change of pace from the last 4 years, I mentioned several months ago that there were landowners, farmers that were taking water mitigation structures out, that we were working with the state on if they had the legal premise to do that. And now we're it's kind of come to roost, because with all this rain that we've had horrible erosion in many places of the county where a lot of these water mitigation structures should have been used and were taken out. So of course, there's been all kinds of complaints from the public calling in and complaining about dirt filling ditches and roads and muddy creeks and that sort of thing. And as a farmer, it was really disappointing to drive around and see some of that. So there was a lot of venting at that meeting, just a lot of folks upset. And what came to be found out, because I asked a question, because I've had several constituents call me and stop me over the last week and say, well, what the heck, how can we make a complaint? How can we report some of these farms that are just terribly eroded? And so we talked about the process of that, but unfortunately, when it comes to the carrying out of punishments, which usually is a fine, that's done by the federal government, and guess who never really carries out their end of the bargain? So our people here get all the calls and complaints, and they go out and do all the work, and they look at everything, and then they move it on up the flagpole to the feds to do the enforcement, and then they do nothing. So that was really disheartening to hear that. I mean, not surprising, but disappointing in that regard. So I guess wheels will keep turning to try to institute change, but it's just really disappointing when you have laws, you have rules, and then there's no follow through. But on the conservation side, on some good news, Little Sioux Park was full this weekend. It was fun seeing all the out-of-state plates. Obviously, it was a great weekend. The swim ponds open, a lot of out-of-state plates, out-of-county plates that were going in and out of there all weekend. That was great. I took my kids yesterday up to Midway Park, north of Mobile. We did some fishing, and there was a lot of people that were there as well. So I'm glad people were out on a nice weekend using the county parks and having fun. So, thank you.
Not so much a committee meeting, but just I wanted to mention Memorial Day yesterday. Memorial Park Cemetery and the different legions and VFW put on an absolutely hallowed and memorable Memorial Day, having both seen and notified family members and those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Just wanted to mention how proud I am of this community and those fellow service members who were there, but also those who weren't there, and just kind of a somber reminder of what yesterday was all about, including, if you think about Edward Monahan just over 100 years ago, right here, for which the first post was named, was the first one to die in France, and just wanted to highlight that. Thank you very much.
Quasi-committee report. Just wanted to highlight what's on the county website. The treasurer's office is going to have to close the Little Anthony Courthouse Wednesday, 7 a.m. to noon for some electrical work. So I just want to make sure the public's aware of that in case they had business out there. Did you want to say any more, Treasurer Bertrand?
First, I want to say thank you for putting it on the website for us, but we were notified on Friday afternoon. City of Anthony is actually redoing their electrical service, taking it from overhead to underground. And so this is going to be the transfer between the two. So they'll take all the overhead offline, put the underground on service. And we cannot get anything clearer than a 1 to 4 hour time period. So we are closing the office until at least noon. And then if all goes well, our staff member who will be assigned up to this office in the morning will go out there and open the office in the afternoon. So hopefully it's not too much of an inconvenience, but we notified people as quick as possible. Again, thank you, Chairman Ung, for actually posting that on the website for us.
Certainly. Thank you for advising everyone ahead of time. Supervisor Bittinger and I had a tour in the last week of the county morgue. We were accompanied by administration with Unity Point, Facilities Director Lincoln Ryan, and the medical staff. And it was a very eye-opening tour. We heard that in the past, Mr. Taylor and then Supervisor DeWitt had done a tour of the morgue. And so we learned a lot about the process and infrastructure needs going forward. We had a good conversation about the process and where the county is at in its planning stage budget-wise. So if there's any budget requirements, those would come in the next budget year. We were upfront about that. But Unity Point has been a great host
Right.
to facilitate this necessary service. And this is a facility that was initially purposed for treating medical needs of disabled children and now has been used for a long time to serve the needs of the county in regards to autopsies. And so without getting too much into details, again, really appreciate Unity Point for what they've done over the years and providing that space and helping us with access and all these things that the county is at the end of the day accountable for. And so next year, we may open this discussion a little bit more as far as committee reports and bringing items to the board and discussing a path forward for the long term. But just wanted to keep the board updated that we did have that tour, and it was very good for us. Mr. Binger, you have anything to add?
No, other than just echo your comments, yeah, Unity Point, they seem to be very cooperative and willing to work with us and understand some of the financial requirements, and we can't make those decisions just yet. So, and this is the beginning planning stages to create an exit plan and a new strategy of where to have the county morgue. And so, but no, it was a good tour, very informative. So that's all. Yep.
All right. Hearing no other committee meeting reports. Item 10 is citizen concerns. For any items not already addressed on the agenda, are there any citizens to speak for the board? Please introduce yourself with your name and address, and Mr. Auditor will time you for 3 minutes, please.
Hi, I'm Sheila Thompson, 1367 Charles Avenue, Lawton, Iowa. I've been a resident in the state of for the county for 65 years and a voter for 45 years in Woodbury County. I've talked to several people about elected officials and hearing of the mess that we have concerns about the Taylor family in Woodbury. The fact that Raddick has ignored the issue and did not show any leadership in future positions with the Woodbury County. I repeat from last week, Taylor needs to resign for his current position and Raddick needs to withdraw from the rank of auditor. Thank you for your attention in this matter.
Thank you. Any other citizen concerns? Seeing none. Item 11, any board concerns? Thank you. We're adjourned. Dennis?
Some good news. Elk Creek Road, they did bid that out, and estimated engineer's cost is 1.4 million. It came in at 1 million, so we're gonna save about $400,000 on that. So that is good news there, because that is shared with the city. So that's all I had. I wanted to put that in real quick.
That was being funded through TIF, wasn't it? Or what?
Not yet. We haven't decided where we're gonna fund it, for sure.
So you're saying the $2 million roundabout is now a $1.6 million roundabout?
Yes.
There was a wink for anyone that couldn't pick that up on the video from the camera way over there on the wall, Mr. Taylor.
Just a little bit of clarification. So I thought we had dedicated, and I know we had some back and forth, and it's not a big deal, but I thought we had dedicated through CIP for, do you remember this kind of back and forth we had on this? So isn't that, I thought it was the board's,
That CIP was the first portion where they did the development out there. They did from the church down to where we did on a development, that was our CIP. This here is from where development stops going south from the church down. That's where we have the roundabout and that new road going down. That's a 1.4 million.
okay, I thought that was the amount. So is that, I guess my question is, how do we decide from the board perspective how that's gonna be funded? 'Cause
The engineer will have to figure that out, and then we'll have to figure out where we're gonna get the money, either through TIF or CIP,
Okay,
because CIP would qualify also.
okay.
But that'd
I
be
thought we
for
had had that
25.
discussion, but my memory is,
That'd be 25 fiscal year, next year.
which is
haven't
what we
alloc-
have
Yeah, we
budgeted.
haven't allocated any money whatsoever out of any funds for the road yet. We had to see what the final costs were gonna be, come back to the board and decide if we wanna use TIF or we wanna use CIP.
And when do you anticipate that would, next couple of months? Because I know it's let in
Yeah,
June.
I would
it's
say yes,
starting. Okay.
yes,
All right.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
yep.
Sorry, everyone, I forgot item 12, dentist concerns.
Sorry.
That's okay. Any other board concerns?